recite our prayer to invoke the blessings of the Lord to be able to understand this transcendental scripture. The prayer is composed of a very simple mantra. It goes like Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So read Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 9, and today there are 2 verses because they told me verse 30, but actually 29 is still needing to be read. So we read 29 and 30, and we repeat number 30. So I'll just read the Sanskrit. Kashahi Brahmano Vidvam Sthatpashila Gunavitaha Aviradhari Shuddhama Mahapurusha Samanitam Sarvabhutanam Bhavana Bhuttashu Antahitam Gumayi. Here is a learned, highly qualified Brahman engaged in performing austerity and eagerly desiring to worship the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul. Oh, Hare Krishna. Okay, reading again. Here is a learned Brahman. He is a learned, highly qualified Brahman, engaged in performing austerity and eagerly desiring to worship the Supreme Lord, the Super Soul, who lives within the core of the heart and all living entities. And so Prabhupada gives a beautiful purpose. He says, the wife of the Brahman did not regard his husband as a superficial Brahman who was called a Brahmana merely because he was born of a Brahmana family. Rather, this Brahman was actually qualified with Brahminical symptoms. Yasaya Lakshanan Praktan. Bhagavatam 7:11-35. The symptoms of a Brahman are stated in the Shastra. Samadhamma tapasocam shanti archatam evacham yanam vijnanam asakam brahma karma swapad swabhavacham. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance.
Can you speak in the mic?
Yes, for the benefit of hearing better, we will lower the mic.
It helps.
It helps. Is that right? Okay then. So it says, peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, wisdom, knowledge, and religiousness. These are the qualities by which the Brahmanas work. Bhagavad Gita 18:43. Not only must the Brahmana be qualified, but he must also be engaged in actual Brahminical activities. Simply to be qualified is not enough. One must engage in a Brahmana's duties. The duty of a Brahman is to know Param Brahma. Krishna, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. Because this Brahmana was actually qualified and was also engaged in Brahminical activities, Brahma Karma. Killing him would be a greatly sinful act, and the Brahman's wife's request was that he not be killed. So, text 30, now we read together. So yam brahma shivaryaste
Brahma Shivaya
Rajasi Prabharadvipo
Rajasi Prabharadvipo
Katamarhati Dharmagya
Katamarhati Dharmagya
Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha
Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha.
Devotees?
Soyam Brahma Shivayaste
Soyam Brahma Shivayaste
Rajasi Prabharadvipo
Rajasi Prabharadvipo
Katamarhati Dharmagya
Katamarhati Dharmagya
Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha
Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha. Soyam Brahma Shivayaste Rajasi Prabharadvipo Katamarhati Dharmagya Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha. Soyam Brahma Shivayaste
Soyam Brahma Shivayaste
Rajasi Prabharadvipo Katamarhati Dharmagya Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha.
Mataji?
Soyam Brahma Shivayaste
Soyam Brahma Shivayaste
Rajasi Prabharadvipo
Rajasi Prabharadvipo
Katamarhati Dharmagya
Katamarhati Dharmagya
Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha
Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha. Soyam Brahma Shivayaste Rajasi Prabharadvipo Katamarhati Dharmagya Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha. Soyam Brahma Shivayaste Rajasi Prabharadvipo Katamarhati Dharmagya Vadam Hitu Vipadmajaha.
Saha He, the Brahmana. Ayam, this. Brahmarishi Varyaha, not only a Brahmana,
Not only a Brahmana,
but the best of great sages,
but the best of great sages,
or Brahmarshis.
or Brahmarshis,
They also from you,
also from you,
Rajarishi Prabharat,
Rajarishi Prabharat,
who are the best of all saintly kings,
who is the best of all saints,
or Rajarsis, Vibhu,
Vibhu,
O master of the state,
O master of the state,
Katam,
Kadam,
how,
our
Arhati,
Arhati,
he deserves,
he deserves,
Dharmagya,
Dharmagya,
O you who are quite aware
O you who are quite aware
of religious principles,
of the religious principle,
Vadam,
Vadam,
killing,
killing,
Pituhu,
Ketuhu,
from the father,
from the father,
Eva,
Viva,
like,
like,
Atmajaha,
Atmajaha,
the son.
the son.
So the translation by Srila Prabhupada says, My Lord, you are completely aware of the religious principles. As a son never deserves to be killed by his father, here is a Brahman who should be protected by the king and never killed. How does he deserve to be killed by a Rajasi like you? So let's repeat that. My Lord, you're completely aware of the religious principles. As a son never deserves to be killed by his father. He is a Brahman
He is a Brahman.
He should be protected by the king
Should be protected by the king.
and never killed.
Never killed.
How does he deserve to be killed?
How does he deserve to be killed?
By Rajasi like you.
By righteousness like you.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Rajasi refers to a king who behaves like a rishi or sage. Such a king is also called Naradadev because he is considered a representative of the Supreme Lord. Because his duty is to rule the kingdom, to maintain Brahminical culture, he never desires to kill a Brahmana. Generally, a Brahmana, woman, child, old man, or cow is never regarded as punishable. Thus, the wife of the Brahmana requested the king to refrain from the sinful act. My Lord, you are completely aware of the religious principles, as a son never deserves to be killed by his father. He is a Brahman who should be protected by the king and never killed. How does he deserve to be killed by Rajasi like you? Om Jnana Timirandasya Yanam Janam Chalakaya Chakshur Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Viravacha Patitanam Paramidyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. First of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my humble realizations in the path of bhakti. I'm simply a student sharing with you the little gatherings of knowledge I picked along the way. So with that note, I ask permission from my seniors to speak on this topic, which is a highly elevated topic, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a scripture which was given by sages to protect what is most dear to every one of us. Our real gift, our real wealth is our consciousness. Consciousness is your transportation in this universe. Wherever your consciousness goes, you go. And your consciousness is being affected at every moment by a number of elements. And today even more with the cell phones. As we speak, the phone is ringing. Someone said in India, if you are as Krishna conscious as you are phone conscious, by now you'll be a prema bhakti, a pure devotee. And all of us have experienced that. As soon as your phone disappears, your identity has been lost. You're not yourself anymore. Your bank is gone. Your identity, your security is gone. It seems like everything is taken from you. Your communication is gone, isn't it? Your photos which you so dearly protect and preserve, they're not there anymore. Suddenly you are not yourself anymore because you don't have everything which you feel to be yourself. So the consciousness is the topmost asset which we carry in this existence. And that is why our founder Acharya named his institution the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. In one specific lecture he says, consciousness does not really exist as we think consciousness. Krishna consciousness is what exists because consciousness comes from God. So when you say consciousness, you're really talking about the consciousness of God. So when we look at the Krishna consciousness movement, we think, oh, this is the consciousness of a group of people who follow Krishna. But that's a wrong perception. Prabhupada is here saying that your consciousness is your eternal treasure, and this society was made to make it the most valuable possible. So everything we do is to uplift your consciousness, so we become better people. And in this verse specifically, we are dealing with a very delicate situation, because you have someone who is a leader. And the first question I'll ask, when you think of a leader, what is the main duty of a leader? I'll open this for everyone to give a comment. We discussed this yesterday. Yes?
To be knowledgeable in the scriptures.
To be knowledgeable in scripture, that's a very good thing.
And Prabhupada instruction, an example.
Okay, right. You're talking about the bigger Vedic scope of instruction. Prabhupada is reflecting those instructions. Okay, to be knowledgeable. Okay, what else would be the duty of a leader?
To be self-controlled.
To be self-controlled.
To be an example to others.
To be an example to others.
Protecting the others, devotees, and serving.
He protects, right? Okay, that's good.
Leader leads.
He
The one who leads.
The one who leads. A leader leads. Yes, that's philosophical. A leader leads. Should lead. Not just should be sitting there, but not driving. Huh? Okay.
One who teaches by example.
One who teaches by example. Yes. Yes.
He has integrity and is not afraid of honest feedback.
He has integrity, not afraid of honest feedback. That's very interesting.
He's humble and non-envious.
He's humble and unenvious. Very good. Very good. And everything you say has a prerequisite. And that is, he understands what is the need of the person in front of him. He fully understands what is the need. And in the Bhagavatam itself, in the beginning cantos, a king is defined when Parikshit Maharaj is being defined, and there he is defined as someone who understands God. He should be a devotee of God. Because if he's a devotee of God, naturally he will understand the needs of all the population. Because we tend to think that the devotee of God would see a certain portion, because he's a devotee of a certain religion. So he would see the followers of his group. But the Bhagavatam is not looking at that division. The Bhagavatam is talking religion as a principle. So he is looking at the needs of every living entity to fulfill their mission in this universe. And because he understands that, he's capable to fulfill every need on a body level, on a conscious level, on a spirit level. So he can fulfill all the layers. So the genuine king should initially be a devotee. And it would be very hard for a devotee of the Lord to try to devour a saintly person. It will be already difficult for him to devour a regular person or even a demon person. What to speak of a person who is so virtuous? The verse is especially interesting because the term used is dharma gya. Dharma gya. And we were discussing yesterday, we had a little interesting discussion group outside the guest house. So what is dharma? When you think of dharma, what is dharma? Have you thought about it?
The laws of God.
The laws of God, that's something profound, yes.
To do the right thing.
To do the right thing, okay, good.
Dharma describes the occupational duty or duty of the spiritual.
Occupation, Prabhupada used that a lot, Maharaj, yes. He translates dharma as occupational duty in many passages. What else could we understand as dharma?
Divine justice. Divine justice.
Divine justice. Okay, that's a new conception. I hadn't thought about divine justice as dharma, but okay. Okay. Any more?
Virtue.
Virtue. That's an interesting. Krishna Kshetra Swami made a very short 10-minute presentation on Dharma for our last seminar in the UK. And he said basically this, he said Dharma would have two main roles. One is a normative role, that is, Dharma is the intrinsic nature of something. For example, fire. Think of fire. What does fire? Fire does light and heat. You cannot remove light and heat. In a poet's description, the happiness, what is the happiness of a guitar? To play. What is the happiness of a saw? To saw. Everything has an intrinsic nature. And we have an intrinsic nature as human beings. And the question is, what would be the dharma of a human being?
Serve.
To serve. Bingo. That is something we cannot stop to do. Like here the wife, she's trying to serve her husband by negotiating with this supposedly leader that is trying to do something very negative for humanity and for her. So she...
Savaikum saparoda moya probhakti adopsi ahait kapasiyata yatma sukashivati. The highest occupational duty for mankind is to serve the Supreme Lord with devotion, and the devotion must have two qualities. Ahaiti apatiyata must be uninterrupted and must be unmotivated. And then it will give all pleasure to the soul, suprashidati, the greatest ecstasy.
Thank you, Maharaj. It's a beautiful definition. So Maharaj has applied the serving propensity to the highest level. But the same serving propensity, when it's applied to the body, now we must serve the body in a way that it's healthy, it's fit. It is adequate to serve the Lord. So here in this verse is very interesting because it actually gives the framework for society. And the framework of society basically is we have to find our nature, who we are. How do we function without hypocrisy, which means a mask? How do we function internally when you are relaxed? When you are yourself, how do you function? That nature has to be discovered. And when you discover that nature, you can function very well. And people love you for that. If you're a builder, and everybody says, he's a builder, he's a genuine builder, you are fully occupied. Or if you're a singer, and every time you sing, everybody wants you to sing again, you found your nature. You like to do it. Or if you like to teach. When I'm teaching, I forget the world. I forget that I have so many other occupations and duties and problems. I'm fully happy to offer some humble perceptions and interact and see that those perceptions somewhat are relevant. So when you find your nature, that's the beginning of society, because without discovering who you are, how will you relate? Then people say, hey, it's so difficult to have a community. Yes, people don't know who they are. They're trying to be what they're not. So it makes it very difficult.
No, it's in complement of what you are saying. There are two swadharmas, the spiritual and material. And so I mentioned the spiritual, but to come there, we must use the material swadharma to come to the spiritual nature.
Exactly, that's the beauty of the Vedic wisdom. Because it's not like this is the body, this is the demon, it's Maya, this is the spirit, this is God, this is heaven. We don't have the dichotomy in the Vedas. We have a connective line which says the body is the vehicle which will elevate you to the transcendence. And you must do it knowing your nature and not repressing, because what can you get from repression? Krishna is very clear on that. So what does that mean? That in our farm communities, we must have room for people to express their natures in the stage they are. If you repress every single nature into one uniform nature that we think is the perfect nature, everybody will be like squeezed, and at one point like a little spring will die we jump out because it's out of place. It's not the moment for that. So a mature spiritual community will have different spaces for different levels of identity.
Then we need more infrastructure, no?
Not necessarily infrastructure. You can have the same room, different times, for different activities. But if it's the same activity in the same room for all the times, whoever does not fit, does not fit. You know what I mean? If the temple is our universe, and here we can only be in a certain type of standard of behavior, if I don't belong here, what do? Boing! I'll spring out. So, it's convenient for me to think, yes, this is the proper behavior, everybody else is outside the proper behavior. But that excludes a lot of the population of the world. So, by creating different space, it can be time. Not necessarily you have a huge space, but in the same place you can have different spaces, you can have different moments, you can have different opportunities and experiences for different levels of identity in relation to what Maharaj said, the supreme identity. And if it's done in a gradual way, you see that it's beautiful because it's just so progressive. And when you reach the top level, you're so happy as a Brahman that people will love to be like you. You're happy, you're not thinking about politics, you're not thinking about what happened in the newspaper. You're thinking about how you're going to glorify God today. Look at the photosynthesis. How is photosynthesis God? And then he can elaborate. Look at the sun entering this room. It's so generous. It's giving us energy. And he can think about that and see that he's not dependent on anybody else. Coming. He's not dependent on anybody else. He's simply dependent on the supreme will of the supreme person. And that gives him an extreme autonomy. And that's what this Brahmana was doing. He was fully autonomous. And now he's ready to make a ceremony to have a son or a daughter. God conscious. And someone is coming to attack him in that moment. And his wife, as a righteous person, is doing her best in preventing that. She's very diplomatic, because she says, oh, she doesn't call him a demon. She says, oh, you are Dharmagya, you know Dharma. So Dharma, intrinsic nature, there are two more definitions of Dharma which are now descriptive. Not normative, but descriptive. You mentioned virtue. That's exactly. To cultivate virtue in every group is considered something good. If you have a religious group, and Christian, for example, if you are humble, oh, that's a very good person. That person is very introspective and meditative. Yes, he fears God. So the virtue, cultivation of virtue is something every religious group will, and even every company will glorify. Oh, this employee is so good. Look, he does good. He stays after the work hours. So cultivation of virtue brings you. And there's a last one, there's many definitions, but another descriptive version of Dharma. Remember?
Auspiciousness?
Auspiciousness. I haven't meditated on that, but I can meditate on that. How do you mean auspiciousness?
Well, virtue leads you to the path of auspiciousness.
Okay, so you could class the virtue of auspiciousness.
It may be similar.
It may be similar to virtue. It is bringing together what it is now to what it should be. Okay? We all know what we should be. And we all know what we are now. The act of bringing the two poles together, this is Dharma. That's elevation. Because you're trying to do the best you can to reach an ideal of what you should be. And that genuine exercise, of honest exercise, of admitting where you are, so you can, and understanding where you should be, bringing the two together so that virtue arises, you understand your intrinsic nature, and you're happy. If you're happy, everybody wants to stay near you. Because you're happy, that's what everybody's looking for, isn't it? You go to Brazil, there's a big sign, go to Paris. You come to Paris, there's a big sign, go to New York. You go to New York, go to India. And like this, all the signboards shoving you from here to there. But everybody's looking for that happiness, isn't it? In Brazil, there's a bossa nova song. It says, I want a house in the field, looking at the forest and looking. So everybody's looking for that little bungalow that you can be so happy. So if you find someone in a bungalow who is happy, you say, hey, what are you doing? I should be doing what you are doing. And that's what this Brahmana was doing. He was happy with his wife. He was religious, he was satisfied, he was pure, he was self-controlled. And this king is doing this atrocity. The last point, we could talk a whole week on this, but I'll just mention this. This verse in the Purport Prabhupada mentions the 5 groups which needs to be protected. It says a Brahmana, a woman, a child, an old man, and a cow. And very briefly, why should a Brahmana be protected? He's so independent. Why should he be? Can't he protect himself? Is he a weakling that he can't protect himself? Yes.
He's the head of society. He teaches everyone. He teaches everyone Dharma, what you are explaining.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. That's really nice. He is so renounced that he does not worry about building a protective army around him or house. He lives very simply because his full time is dedicated to giving. A Brahman is a giver. So he should be protected to be able to give more. And if you're a giver and you didn't spend your life doing your little, security base, your retirement, everything, you are on a less protected situation because you gave, many of us were preachers, how many years? Prashadam, books, receiving guests, being in the background, being in the foreground, wherever you were there giving. That's the Brahminical platform. And therefore, when you get older, you feel, hey, wait a minute, what about my security? What about when I can't function anymore? Who's going to take care of me? So that's why protection of the Brahman is very important, because the Brahman is very happy and he can give so much. Because his main mentality is to give, is not to take. The Brahman is giving, and he's happy. He knows how to build a house, he knows the directions of the devas, he knows your life, what's happening to you. You're going to become a brahmachari for 50 years, sannyasi, or not. So you tell me, what about my future? Or someone who wants to get married, will I get married to a good husband? So future is something which everybody is checking. Actually, Pankajangri Prabhu, he says in a class similar to this verse, he says, actually, I received so many calls that I've named Dr. Nishingadev. Because people are constantly asking for prayers because they have some health issue or some problem or some difficulty. So they call me and say, make a puja for Nishingadev today. Have you ever done that? I have.
I did it for the French yatra.
Yes, even for the whole yatra, right? So puja has been done. So a Brahmana has the capability of conducing those prayers to the Lord. And Pankajangri Prabhu is such a Brahmana, isn't it? He's so detached from everything. He could just feel that happiness. So he should be protected. Then we talk about a woman. Oh, today that's a big topic. Why should a woman be protected? Prabhu, what are you talking about? We're autonomous. We can do. Huh? But should a woman be protected? Or should the woman protect the men today?
We also distinguish protection from oppression.
Okay, so ready to get some militant argument. Yes, protection from oppression. Okay, that's. But why should a woman, the question, should a woman be protected?
She's gonna have babies, you know. So
She's going to have babies.
she's gonna be dependent.
She's going to be dependent in her pregnancy. That's something
You have
important.
to-
They are weak.
Hmm?
They are weak.
They're weak. Are you sure you want to make that statement? I
Weak
can.
physically, mentally.
Yeah, who will lift the car? Not you, me, or Nazi or the male. The male can do the job for the
No.
Oh,
Super
for repairing.
wrestle and ride
the
horses.
man.
Well,
And then
I can understand what you're saying, but I have seen women who are black belt of karate. They can lift a car today, and they can take 50 kilos bag of cement and it was like, so that's used to be a reference, but today I'm not sure. Actually, in India, in some tribes, the women were the builders, and the men would sit in a hut and play cards. The Banjara tribe.
No,
So-
but what I mean, it may be not mentally. I'm speaking of the hard job. The hard job are done by the men.
Okay, so let's ask the women.
And having weapons, it's a job for men because it is difficult, it is dangerous, it is hard job, hard work. Some women are also in the army, but are fighting in Ukraine. I see they fight, but it's not the right order of things, you know, because nowadays everything becomes topsy-turvy. But normally the men are stronger and their strengths are to be used for protecting women.
Okay, the men are stronger, their strength will be used to protect women. So, alright, that's a vision that the Bhagavatam actually sometimes speaks about in a very interesting way. That's what I mean, this can be a whole week's discussion. Let's ask the women, should the women be protected?
Yeah, but I said we have to define what is protection. Because
Wait, another woman, another person, another comment who hasn't given a comment yet.
they don't speak up.
Usually in society, men are considered to be strong. I don't know if it is the reality, but when a woman is assisted by a man, she feels stronger. You know, especially physically. If she is attacked, she thinks that because she has a man close to her, she could be defended. In that situation, we might understand that a man is stronger than a woman because she relies on the man to be able to be protected, physically especially.
That's a very interesting analogy you're giving, and I heard once, like, if you look at a flag, I've heard that, remember we heard that quite a lot. You see a flag, there's a pole which is very unattractive, a metal rod, very high, and it's connected to a beautiful flag which is waving and showing its colors, right? So this analogy is interesting because the pole we consider the man. Nobody notices, his job is just to make the infrastructure. And when that is in place, the woman can then express her femininity, her motherhood, her education nature. So today what I understand is there's a complementary protection. The man gives some kinds of protection and the woman gives other kind of protection. For the man, when he comes home like a king, his mind is fully disturbed, it's the woman who pacifies him. Yes?
I personally, by my experience when I meet the girls, when I do some Sankirtaning tour, a lot of these girls are unprotected on the platform of morality by their whole society actually, because they think they can do anything they want. I met a girl, she was 14 years old and she had already done so many abortion. So in that sense, there is no protection of the woman now by the society, you know.
Yes, thank you for that comment. Prabhupada brings a deeper comment. He says the woman carries the femininity, which has a capacity. He compares that to fire, and the man has the butter. So once the man is in contact with the femininity, whatever it is, has the tendency to melt, to become enamorated, to become in love, to become passionate, right? So if that femininity is not protected, it's like gold. That you have gold and you put outside your door, and you just, okay, it will be protected. Nobody does that. They protect gold very well. So femininity should be protected because it leads to engagement of natures. The male-female nature starts to be engaged. And once it's engaged without consideration of what's the result, you have this problem. The 14-year-old has done an abortion. You can imagine psychologically the trauma of this being.
She was happy about it.
Apparently, yes, but think of her over 40 years. The relationship with the son, or the son that didn't come, that she was aborted, and the relationship with her teenagerhood, which was lost because of all this. So apparently I'm free, I did whatever I wanted, it was so happy.
I'm just thinking about June says to Krishna, if womanhood, if the chastity of womanhood is gone, if they are unprotected, then the whole dynasty will be ruined because there will be Varnashankar, unwanted progeny. So I think that's the basic point of the Vedic view.
Yes. Thank you, Maharaj. I was going to get to that. I was just preparing the ground, but you just brought it to a good time because class will end and we have to conclude. The point is that once that femininity is engaged with another consciousness, you produce a child which you don't love. The child is there, but you don't have the love to work for the child, to sacrifice your nights for the child, to sacrifice your career for the child. So then the child is unloved, and the child will be a burden on society. Will be plus, because the nature is not organized, the child will not know its own nature, will not understand. Okay, I think I said something inappropriate, so the class left. So, my understanding of that is if that femininity is protected, not in the way of oppression, but in the way of helping to understand how to express femininity in a beautiful way. There's a big confusion between protection and oppression, I fully agree, and to be able to let femininity be, have a space, the men need to be very prepared. Because the easiest thing is oppression, but oppression leads to the spring jumping out of the box, and you get a woman who says, I don't want to follow that strict person, I will do my way. And you start to have all this. But when you have a family where femininity is protected, it's so beautiful. You see the motherhood, the family is together around the mother, and everybody comes together in a big country house like this, and everybody has that strong family basis. So that's Arjuna's point, which Krishna refutes. He says, yes, but that's material. We want something higher. But nevertheless, for functioning society, that's a very valid argument, that they need to be protected. And each of these 5 categories is worth a whole day seminar. I'll just jump to the cow, which was my main topic, but I have 2 minutes to talk about that. The cow is, by Krishna's design, one of the matrix of abundance in society. Yesterday, His Holiness Bhakticharya Swami, in his many lectures, was saying the British people were trying to understand why the Indian population was so affluent, so opulent. And Lord Clive inquired from the sages, and he found out that the cow is the reason of prosperity of these people, the culture of cows. And you see the Prabhupada many times make Brahminical he says, an advanced civilization is based on Brahminical culture and cow protection. And then cow protection is just an activity, a barn and dairy. What is that to do with consciousness? Prabhupada is talking about the blueprint of the universe. What energies the cows carry which can create abundance. both in the tangible form, milk, ghee, dung, and the intangible form, auspiciousness, as you mentioned. Just the presence of the cow can eliminate vastu problems, because she carries such a high profile in the universal affairs. Just by understanding the kind of fertility which comes from the cow dung, Rudolf Steiner created the biodynamic agriculture, which is basically understanding the stars, the moons, and what kind of microbiology comes from the cow dung in combination with the cow horn. He would take a cow horn from a dead cow, he would stuff cow dung, seal it, bury it for 6 months, and bring it out. Half kg was enough to fertilize 1 hectare. Just by, in spirals, sprinkling it on the fields. Because every drop would proliferate a whole colony of microbiology. And that microbiology, like a contamination, a good contamination, would proliferate and generate more and more microbes which can generate abundance. So when we think of abundance, we are looking at the top surface, but the real abundance is under the surface. There's a whole population under the surface which is working tirelessly, doing their dharma to generate nutrients. And when they do that, what's on top of the earth is beautiful. So we humans have forgotten, just by lack of contact with nature, that life comes from life, and life is present under the earth. The microbiological life is the starting point of abundance. So when we think of agriculture, it's not what's out of the top, it's what's under the soil that is making that magic happen. And how to activate that, that's what the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, and the scriptures is full. And we have to be able to decipher and bring. When Krishna is describing, we all look at those pictures of Krishna with his 900,000 cows. That's the answer for the cow protection program. It's right in that picture. All the biological, the systematic answers that we're looking for is right there in that picture. If you're able to decipher, you have your cow protection program right scripted. Not only cow protection, but the Brahminical culture, the social tissue, how it's weaved, the relational issues of that community is solved in that picture. The economy, the ecology, everything is solved in that picture. And that's Bhakti-Chara Swami, he said, Prabhupada didn't have enough time to establish this because his mission was to establish Krishna consciousness all over the world. But he spoke and he gave instructions, he wrote. He says, now that we have so many temples, it's time to start cow protection. That's our real business. His words yesterday. Those of you who were here in the late afternoon after everybody was tired from our cooking festival, we had a few devotees and I presented that. And Bhakti-Chara, his whole Bhakti-Chara Swami was so concerned about this because he simply understood. Prabhupada wanted this, and I haven't done it in this life. And I heard this personally from Prabhupada, that Prabhupada told him personally, I've only done half of what I wanted to do. I want to have this grihastas living peacefully, based on the earth, on production of food, cloth, milk, abundance, and sharing that. Prabhupada really wanted that. But he had to establish Krishna consciousness, so there's so many detours on the road. But he says, now, that's our real business. And on Friday, the 8th, coming Friday, there's a seminar in the UK where we're going to give a blueprint of this. And in the seminar, there's Rancho Prime. He's one of the first ecologists in the movement. He was talking about this in the 80s and 90s. He wrote books about it. He went to Vrindavan. He was telling the leaders, we need to be ecological in our movement. He wrote Hinduism and Ecology, Cows and Earth, many books. And he's going to present the ecological perspective. Then we have Shamasundra Prabhu speaking about how to put that into a practical shape of a dairy. And here comes John Turner, a 4th-generation farmer who was a beef farmer quit because he said it's not feasible. He dropped to dairy. His 3 daughters became vegetarians and vegans. He said, this is the end of the line of my dynasty of farmers because nobody will carry on. So he made a radical change and became an organic grain producer. He's got 380 acres, which is quite a reasonable piece of land. He produces 195 types of wheats in one field. And that wheat is harvested, it's sent to a windmill. The windmill distributes the flour to artisan bakers, which have a connection to John. So he has eliminated the middleman completely. He's becoming ecological, regenerative, and he's not speaking, he's making it. He makes oat milk, he makes all these flours, he produces barley.
In England?
In England. And he's going to be the speaker about how to, not only that, he has cooperated with a foundation in the UK called the Ahimsa Dairy Foundation. And the cows of the Ahimsa Dairy are now integrated into the grain production. It's a beautiful operation. And that's the future, the grains in the milk, that's the future. And he's going to speak about this. And I also give a contribution to that seminar, saying how does Dharma and agroecology hold hands? Where do they meet? And it's practical and theoretical. So this is coming next Friday. It's online and on site, so you all can participate. And I'll highly encourage you to also, the seminars by the School of Bhakti, they are organizing with the ministry. We are working on organizing that.
Can you give us the link, the name?
Yes, I can give the link. What is the best way? Is it to give in a forum in Mayapur, in the new Mayapur, is there a forum everybody sees?
And also printed. I believe in
Yes.
both. Printing things,
Okay. Yes, old school says we should print and put it.
Not everybody's stuck
Yes.
to them.
So, thank you. I'm sorry. It should end now. There might be some questions there. I don't know if you're allowed. One question? Okay.
So, thank you. I appreciate you took this difficult discussion about relationship between men and women. And my question is that in my own heart, I see I have the desire or the tendency to exploit women. I have experience of this with my ex-girlfriend. So how do I overcome this?
How to exploit?
How do I overcome this desire I have to exploit women?
How to overcome the desire to exploit women? Wow, this question is the deep. This is the reason of the Bhagavatam. Actually, your question actually leads to transcendence. Because when you give up that, you will love God.
But it seems so impossible to give us so deep in my heart, and I hurt her so much.
It seems impossible, but it is possible to overcome. He is a living example behind you. He has overcome the sex desire by offering all his life to God. He is another seating example. Right in that chair, he has done it. And all of us are trying to do in our own capacity to reach that level where it's gone. Now, repression will not do the job. It can only be achieved by understanding what it is and why is it that we're looking for that. It's the same propensity that we have to love Krishna, but it's being applied to the material nature. And then when we look at material nature, what's more enjoyable than a picnic with a fair lady, isn't it? The fair lady enjoys the company of the man and the man enjoys the company of the lady. So they enjoy. So that's the symbol, the romantic symbol of France, isn't it? You're coming to France with a little basket, a little cloth, beautiful gentleman, a beautiful lady, they sit. So that's the iconic romantic vision of the 30s, 40s, 50s. So there's a little more detail, but you have a car, you have things. But what I want to say to you is, the only way to overcome that is by mercy. Because that energy is governed by the material energy. And it's much bigger than us. We're very tiny. And the material energy corresponds to 1/4 of the whole material nature. So by prayer, by mercy of the Vaishnavas, by constant practice, you will be able to engage with nature. Instead of cutting, you engage it. And you use it adequately, gradually. That becomes that leads to Grihastha seminar. And then how to be a person who is serving the relationship, not exploiting the relationship. And that's possible. There are many devotees here who have done it. You know, some couples here had 40 years of existence, peacefully existence. So I have to end here because of the time. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhakti Vaishnava Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaura Premanandi, Adi
You're going to speak more. I'm a little frustrated here. You are here. When are you leaving?
Today.
We could ask a few questions this morning.
So that's